You have been handing your power to people who don't even think about you before they fall asleep at night. Every time someone disrespected you and you fired back with an explanation, every time someone pushed your buttons and you reacted exactly the way they wanted, every time someone threw an accusation at you and you scrambled to defend yourself like a man on trial, you handed them the remote control to your emotions. You gave them the one thing they wanted more than anything, which was proof that they could get to you. And the worst part? You thought you were standing up for yourself. You thought reacting was strength. You thought explaining yourself was the mature thing to do. But it wasn't. It was surrender. It was you performing for people who already made up their minds about you before you opened your mouth. Look around you. The people who hold real power in this world, the ones who command respect without raising their voice, the ones who walk into a room and shift the entire energy, they don't argue, they don't chase, they don't explain. They do something that terrifies the average person. They ignore. They let silence do the work that most people try to do with words. And the people who try to provoke them, they're left standing there, swinging at air, looking foolish, wondering why nothing they do gets a reaction. 500 years ago, one man decoded the exact psychology behind this. He studied rulers, conquerors, manipulators, and the people who destroyed themselves by being too reactive, too emotional, too eager to be understood. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and the principles he uncovered about human nature, about power, about the psychology of influence, they haven't changed, not one bit. Because human beings haven't changed. We still react when we shouldn't. We still explain ourselves to people who don't deserve it. We still hand our power away to anyone clever enough to provoke us. Today, I'm going to share with you 7 dark psychology principles from Machiavelli's philosophy that will teach you the deadliest skill a man can possess. The ability to never react, never explain, and simply ignore. These aren't tricks for manipulating people. These are shields for protecting yourself from people who are already manipulating you. But let me be clear about something before we begin. I'm not telling you to become heartless. I'm not asking you to shut down your humanity. What I'm showing you is how to be strategic with your energy instead of reckless with it. How to be intelligent with your emotions instead of enslaved by them. Because in a world full of people who know exactly which buttons to push, the most dangerous thing you can be is the person whose buttons don't work anymore. Now, I want you to drop this affirmation in the comments. Say it with me. I control my reactions. I control my power. Are you ready? Let's begin. Number 1. The power of the non-reaction. Most people believe that when someone attacks you, you have to respond. That staying silent is the same as being weak. That ignoring someone means they won. This is one of the most destructive beliefs you will ever carry. Because the moment you react to someone who provoked you, you've already lost. You didn't lose because your response was wrong. You lost because you responded at all. You confirmed that their words had weight. You showed them the exact location of your emotional wound. And now they have a map. Think about this carefully. When someone insults you and you fire back, what actually happens? You feel a short burst of satisfaction. Maybe you even win the argument. But here's what you missed. The other person now knows exactly what triggers you. They know what words get under your skin. They know the frequency that makes you vibrate. And every single person watching that exchange, whether it's in a workplace, a friend group, or online, they all just watched you get controlled. They watched someone pull your strings and make you dance. That's not strength. That's slavery, with the illusion of resistance. Machiavelli once said, "Everyone sees what you appear to be. Few experience what you really are." This is the foundation of the non-reaction. When you don't react, people can't see what you really are. They can't map your emotions. They can't find your weaknesses. You become something that deeply unsettles the human mind. You become unreadable. And an unreadable person is an unpredictable person. And an unpredictable person is a dangerous person. Not dangerous because they might hurt someone. Dangerous because no one knows what they'll do next. And that uncertainty, that's where real power lives. Here's what this looks like in practice. Someone at work makes a snide comment about you in a meeting. The old you would clench your jaw, fire back with something clever, maybe even bring it up after the meeting. The new you does something that changes the entire dynamic. You pause, you look at them for 1 second longer than is comfortable, and then you continue what you were saying as if they never spoke. You don't acknowledge it. You don't address it. You erase it. Watch what happens next. That person will feel more unsettled by your silence than they would have felt by any response you could have given them. Because your silence communicates something terrifying. It says you're not even worth my energy. It says I'm operating on a level where your words can't reach me. It says I see you, and I've decided you're irrelevant. This is the psychology of perceived dominance. When you don't react, the other person's brain starts working against them. They start wondering what you're thinking. They start questioning whether their attack even landed. They start replaying the moment over and over, trying to figure out why you didn't flinch. And in that mental loop, they've given you more psychological real estate in their mind than you ever could have taken by arguing. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My silence is louder than their words. Number 2. Never explain yourself to someone who is committed to misunderstanding you. This is one of the most painful lessons a man has to learn, because everything inside you wants to explain. Everything inside you wants to say, no, that's not what I meant. Let me clarify. Let me show you who I really am. But here's the brutal truth that will save you years of wasted energy. When someone has already decided who you are, no amount of explanation will change their mind. You're not dealing with a misunderstanding. You're dealing with a decision. They decided to see you a certain way, and your explanation isn't going to override their decision. It's going to fuel it. Think about the last time you tried to explain yourself to someone who was already against you. Did it work? Did they suddenly say, "Oh, I see. I was wrong about you. Thank you for clarifying"? No. What happened is they took your explanation and twisted it. They used your own words against you. They found new angles to attack you from, because you gave them ammunition by opening your mouth. You gave them material. And people who are committed to misunderstanding you will use every word you say as a new weapon. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote, "Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, for everyone can see and few can feel." What he meant is that people form their opinions based on what they see on the surface, not on the deeper truth. And if someone has already formed a surface-level judgment about you, your words won't change it. Only your actions over time can shift perception. But even then, you're not explaining. You're demonstrating. There's a massive difference between the two. Here's a scenario you've probably lived through. You did something with good intentions. Maybe you helped someone, made a sacrifice, went out of your way. But somehow the story got twisted. People started saying you had ulterior motives. You had selfish reasons. You were just trying to look good. And your first instinct was to defend yourself, to explain what really happened, to set the record straight. But the moment you started explaining, you looked guilty. Because innocent people don't scramble to prove their innocence. Innocent people don't chase validation. The person who starts defending themselves aggressively is the person everyone suspects is hiding something. That's the paradox. The more you explain, the less people believe you. So what does the strategically intelligent person do? He does nothing. He lets his actions speak over time. He lets the truth reveal itself through results, not through arguments. He understands that the people who matter will figure it out eventually. And the people who won't, they were never going to be in his corner anyway, so why waste the breath? Here's what this looks like in your daily life. When someone accuses you of something false, instead of launching into a defense, you say one sentence. You say, "I know who I am," or you say, "You're free to think whatever you want," and then you walk away. Not angrily, not dramatically, calmly, like a man who has nothing to prove because his life is the proof. That composure, that refusal to perform innocence, that will shake people to their core. Because most people expect you to fight. They expect you to explain. And when you don't, they're forced to sit with their own accusations. And accusations feel very different when no one is there to receive them. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I don't audition for people who've already cast me as the villain. Number 3, strategic disappearance. Most people are terrified of being forgotten. They post constantly. They text first. They show up everywhere. They make themselves available at all hours because deep down they believe that if they're not visible, they're not valuable. This is one of the greatest psychological traps of the modern age, because the truth is the exact opposite. The less available you are, the more valuable you become. The less you show up, the more your presence is felt when you do. The less you speak, the more weight your words carry when you finally open your mouth. This is the scarcity principle applied to human identity. In economics, anything that is rare becomes valuable. Gold is valuable not because it's the most useful metal, but because it's scarce. Diamonds aren't the most beautiful stones in the world, but they're priced like they are because of controlled scarcity. Your presence, your attention, your energy, these work the exact same way. When you give them away freely to everyone, they lose value. When you withdraw them strategically, they become the thing everyone wants. Machiavelli once said, "A wise man ought never to make himself depend wholly on one thing or one person." And I'd add to that, a wise man should never make his value depend on his constant presence. Because the moment people know you'll always be there, they stop appreciating you being there. That's hedonic adaptation. It's the psychological phenomenon where people get used to whatever is constant in their lives and stop noticing it. The promotion that excited you for a week, the relationship that thrilled you for a month, the friendship that meant the world to you until it became routine. Humans adapt to consistency and then take it for granted. So when you're always available, always responsive, always around, you become the emotional equivalent of furniture. People know you're there, but they don't really see you anymore. Here's the real-world application. Think about that friend who is always available, always picks up the phone, always says yes to every plan, always texts back in 30 seconds. How much do you value their time? Now think about the friend who disappears for a while, the one who's hard to reach, the one who shows up unexpectedly and then vanishes again. When that person calls you, you pick up immediately. When they invite you somewhere, you rearrange your schedule. Why? Because their attention feels like a gift. Their presence feels like an event. That's not manipulation. That's understanding how human psychology actually works instead of how you wish it worked. Most people make themselves the most accessible person in every relationship. The strategically intelligent person makes themselves the most missed. They don't ghost people out of cruelty. They withdraw to invest in themselves, to build in silence, to create distance that makes their return more powerful than their departure. When you disappear strategically, people are forced to sit with your absence, and in that absence, they reassess your value. They remember what you brought to the table. They realize what they took for granted. And when you reappear, you're not the same person who left. You've leveled up, and they can feel it. Here's the practical rule. For every 3 times someone reaches out to you, initiate once. For every 5 invitations you receive, accept 3. Create small windows of unavailability, not rudely, not dramatically, Just naturally. Let your phone ring sometimes. Let the text sit for a few hours. Let people wonder where you are, because wonder is the birthplace of respect. When people have to wonder about you, they start thinking about you, and when they start thinking about you, you're already winning. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My absence amplifies my power. Number 4. The fortress mind. Here's what nobody tells you about emotional reactions. They are not natural. They are trained. Somewhere along the line, someone taught you that when people say hurtful things, you should feel hurt. That when people disrespect you, you should feel angry. That when people ignore you, you should feel worthless. These aren't instincts. These are programs, and just like any program, they can be rewritten. The fortress mind is the psychological concept of building an internal structure so solid, so reinforced, so impenetrable that external events cannot destabilize your internal state. It doesn't mean you don't feel anything. You do. The difference is, you feel it, you observe it, and you choose whether or not it gets to control your behavior. The weak man feels anger and immediately acts on it. The strong man feels anger, lets it pass through him like weather, and then decides his next move with a clear head. Both men felt the same emotion, only one was controlled by it. Machiavelli once said, "He who is not master of himself will always be a servant of others." Read that again in your mind. If you are not the master of your emotions, your reactions, your impulses, then you are the servant of anyone who knows how to trigger them. Your boss who knows that criticism makes you spiral. Your ex who knows that jealousy makes you call. Your friend who knows that guilt makes you say yes. These people aren't necessarily evil, but they've learned, consciously or unconsciously, how to press your buttons. And as long as those buttons work, you're not free. You're a machine that runs whenever someone else inputs the command. Let me paint this picture for you. Two men receive the same insult at a party. The first man's face goes red, his jaw tightens, he steps forward, he fires back with something aggressive. Everyone watches. The room gets tense. Maybe it escalates, maybe it doesn't. But everyone in that room now knows his trigger. They know exactly what it takes to destabilize him. The second man hears the same insult. His expression doesn't change. He takes a sip of his drink. He looks at the person who insulted him with something that isn't anger and isn't even contempt. It's almost curiosity, like he's observing a specimen, and then he turns to someone else and continues his conversation as if nothing happened. Which man would you be more afraid of? The one who exploded, or the one who didn't even blink? The answer is obvious, and that answer tells you everything you need to know about real power. Building the fortress mind is a daily practice. It starts with catching yourself in the moment of reaction. The next time someone says something that makes your blood pressure rise, I want you to do something specific. I want you to notice the sensation in your body before you notice the words in your mouth. Feel the heat in your chest. Feel the tension in your hands. Feel the tightness in your throat. And in that split second between the trigger and the response, insert a gap. Breathe into that gap, because in that gap lives your freedom. In that gap is where you choose who you are instead of letting someone else choose for you. Over time, that gap gets wider. The triggers get weaker. And one day you'll realize that someone just said the exact thing that would have destroyed you 6 months ago, and you felt almost nothing. Not because you're numb, but because you've outgrown the version of you that needed to react to feel powerful. You've become the version that knows true power is in the pause. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My mind is a fortress. Nothing enters without my permission. Number 5. The economics of personal energy. You have a finite amount of energy every single day. Mental energy, emotional energy, creative energy. And here's what most men do with that energy. They wake up and immediately spend it on people and situations that give them nothing in return. They argue with someone online for 45 minutes. They replay a conversation from yesterday for 2 hours. They stress about someone's opinion of them all afternoon. They say yes to plans they don't want to attend, then spend the whole time wishing they were somewhere else. By the end of the day, they're exhausted, not from building their life, not from pursuing their goals, not from investing in their growth. They're exhausted from performing, defending, and reacting. They spent their entire daily budget of energy on expenses that generated zero returns. This is what I call the economics of personal energy, and Machiavelli understood it better than most modern psychologists. He once said, "He who neglects what is done for what ought to be done sooner affects his ruin than his preservation." In modern language, the man who wastes his energy on what should happen instead of dealing with what does happen is destroying himself. You're spending your energy arguing with people who should behave better. You're spending your energy wishing the world was fair. You're spending your energy being angry at situations you can't control. And while you're doing all that, the things you can control, your body, your skills, your income, your mindset, they're sitting there untouched, collecting dust. Here's the principle in action. Think about the last week of your life. How many hours did you spend thinking about someone who wronged you? How many hours did you spend replaying an argument? How many hours did you spend scrolling through someone's social media, comparing yourself, feeling angry, feeling inadequate? Now add up those hours. That is the exact amount of time you stole from your own future. Those hours could have been a workout, a chapter of a book, a new skill learned, a business plan drafted, a conversation with someone who actually adds to your life. But instead, those hours went to people who would be surprised to learn you were even thinking about them. The strategically intelligent person treats their attention like an investor treats capital. Every unit of attention is evaluated before it's spent. Does this person deserve my energy? Does this situation generate a return? Does this thought serve my goals or sabotage them? If the answer is no, the attention is withdrawn immediately, not with anger, not with resentment, with the cold, clean efficiency of a businessman closing an unprofitable account. It's not personal, it's strategic. And the moment you start managing your energy like this, you'll notice something incredible. You'll have more of it. You'll feel sharper, more focused, more creative, because you're not leaking energy in 40 different directions anymore. You're channeling it into the 3 or 4 things that actually move your life forward. Here's the practical framework. Every morning, identify your top 3 energy investments for the day. These are the people, projects, or practices that deserve your best energy. Everything else gets the leftovers, if there are any. And if someone or something tries to steal energy from your top 3, you cut it off without hesitation. No guilt, no second guessing. Just a clean redirection of your most valuable resource back to where it belongs. Drop this affirmation in the comments. My attention is gold. I invest it wisely. Number 6. Ignore as psychological warfare. Most people think ignoring someone is passive, that it's the thing you do when you can't think of a response, that it's weakness disguised as maturity. They couldn't be more wrong. Ignoring, when done strategically, is one of the most psychologically devastating things you can do to another human being, and I'm going to explain exactly why. Human beings are wired for recognition. It's built into our neurology. From the moment we're born, we seek acknowledgement. A baby cries not just because it's hungry, but because it needs to know someone is there, someone sees it, someone is responding to its existence. That need never goes away. It just gets more sophisticated. As adults, we don't cry for attention. We provoke, we insult, we create drama, we start arguments. We do whatever it takes to force a response from the people we want to feel seen by. Every provocation is just an adult version of a baby's cry. It's saying, see me, acknowledge me, prove that I exist in your world. And that's exactly why ignoring someone is so powerful. When you ignore someone who is trying to provoke you, you're not just refusing to engage, you're denying them proof of their relevance. You're telling their deepest psychological need that it doesn't matter. And that is a wound that no insult can match. Because insults still acknowledge the person, arguments still acknowledge the person. Even hatred acknowledges the person. But being ignored, that says something worse than any of those things. It says, you don't even register on my radar. It says, you are so far beneath my level of concern that I didn't even notice you were trying. Machiavelli once said, men are so simple and so much creatures of habit that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. What he's really saying is that most people are predictable. They react when provoked. They explain when accused. They engage when baited. And anyone who wants to control them knows exactly how to do it. The person who breaks this pattern, the person who doesn't react, doesn't explain, and simply ignores, they become the exception. They become the person that the standard playbook doesn't work on. And when someone can't control you with the tools that work on everyone else, they become afraid of you. Not afraid of what you'll do, afraid of what they can't make you do. Let me give you a scenario. Someone spreads a rumor about you. The old you would confront them. You'd demand to know why. You'd explain your side to everyone who heard it. You'd spend days clearing your name. And in doing all that, you'd give the rumor legs. You'd give it oxygen. You'd make it the main topic of conversation. The new you? You hear about the rumor. You say nothing. You do nothing. You continue building, working, succeeding, as if the rumor doesn't exist. And here's what happens next. People watch you not react. And your non-reaction communicates something far more powerful than any denial could. It says, either the rumor isn't true, and he knows it'll die on its own, or he's so above this that it doesn't even warrant his attention. Either interpretation makes you look powerful, and the person who started the rumor, they look small. Because their attack didn't land, their provocation got zero response, and in the social arena, a failed attack makes the attacker look weaker than if they'd never attacked at all. This is the principle of psychological asymmetry. When someone attacks you and you don't respond, the imbalance creates discomfort in everyone who witnesses it. The attacker expected resistance. The audience expected drama. And when neither comes, there's a void. And human psychology fills that void with the assumption that the silent person is the stronger one. Every single time. Here's your practical takeaway. The next time someone tries to provoke you, whether it's a comment, a rumor, a passive-aggressive text, or a public slight, run it through this filter. Will responding improve my life in any measurable way? If the answer is no, and it almost always is, you give it nothing, no reaction, no acknowledgement, no energy. You treat it the way you'd treat a stranger yelling nonsense on a street corner. You walk past. You keep going, and you never look back. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I erase the unworthy. Number 7. Become the person they can't figure out. This is the final principle, and in many ways it's the most powerful because it ties everything else together. All the previous lessons, the non-reaction, the refusal to explain, the strategic disappearance, the fortress mind, the energy economics, the power of ignoring, they all lead to one ultimate result. They make you unreadable. And an unreadable person is the most psychologically dominant person in any room, any relationship, any organization. Here's why. The human brain is a prediction machine. Its primary function is to predict what's going to happen next so it can prepare a response. When you meet someone, your brain immediately starts categorizing them. It reads their facial expressions, their body language, their speech patterns, their reactions to stimuli, and it builds a model, a prediction model, and once that model is built, the person becomes manageable. You know what makes them happy. You know what makes them angry. You know what makes them insecure. You know how to get what you want from them and how to avoid what you don't want. This is how most people navigate every single relationship in their lives. They build prediction models of each other and then operate within those models. But what happens when someone can't be modeled? What happens when a person's behavior doesn't fit a pattern? When their reactions are unpredictable? When their silence could mean anything? When their calmness doesn't crack no matter what pressure is applied? The brain goes into alert mode. It can't build the model. It can't predict the outcomes. And when the brain can't predict, it does something fascinating. It assigns extra significance. It starts paying more attention. It starts treating that person as more important, more intelligent, more dangerous than everyone else in the room. Not because the person did anything threatening, but because the brain perceives unpredictability as a potential threat, and it elevates the status of threats to ensure survival. Machiavelli captured this perfectly when he wrote, "The lion cannot protect himself from traps, and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. One must therefore be a fox to recognize traps, and a lion to frighten wolves." Being unreadable is being both the fox and the lion simultaneously. People can't trap you because they don't know what you're thinking. People can't intimidate you because they can't predict your response. You exist in a category that the average person's brain cannot file, and that inability to categorize you is what makes you unforgettable. Think about the most compelling people you've ever met in your life. I guarantee they had one thing in common. You couldn't quite figure them out. There was something about them that kept you thinking, something you couldn't pin down. They weren't an open book. They weren't constantly broadcasting their emotions, their opinions, their insecurities to the world. They had layers. They had depth that you sensed, but couldn't see. And that mystery made them magnetic. Not because they were trying to be mysterious, but because they were operating with a level of self-mastery that most people can't even comprehend. Here's the practical side. Becoming unreadable isn't about being fake. It's about being selective. It's about choosing what you reveal, when you reveal it, and to whom. The old you told everyone your plans before they were finished. The new you moves in silence and lets results make the announcement. The old you wore every emotion on your face so that anyone could read your internal state like a billboard. The new you controls your expressions, your tone, and your body language so that people see what you want them to see. The old you needed people to understand you because you thought being understood was the same as being valued. The new you knows that being understood is overrated. Being respected is what matters, and respect doesn't come from being transparent. Respect comes from being formidable. Machiavelli also said, "Never was anything great achieved without danger," and the danger he's talking about isn't physical. It's the danger of stepping outside the patterns that make you comfortable. The danger of being different from everyone else. The danger of being the person who doesn't react when everyone expects a reaction, who doesn't explain when everyone demands an explanation, who simply ignores what everyone else would obsess over. That takes more courage than any loud outburst. That takes more strength than any argument you could win, because it requires you to trust yourself more than you trust anyone else's opinion of you. Drop this affirmation in the comments. I am the person they can't predict and can't forget. You've just learned the 7 dark psychological principles of strategic indifference. You now understand why reacting is not strength, but surrender. You've discovered why explaining yourself to the wrong people is the fastest way to lose their respect. You've learned that strategic disappearance doesn't make you less valuable, it makes you irreplaceable. You've built the blueprint for the fortress mind, the internal architecture that makes you immune to emotional manipulation. You've seen how managing your energy like an investor separates the powerful from the powerless. You've understood why ignoring isn't passive, but is the most aggressive form of psychological dominance. And you've unlocked the final principle, becoming unreadable, which makes you the most compelling and dangerous person in any room you enter. You started this video as one person. You're finishing it as someone fundamentally different. The version of you that clicked on this video was a man who reacted too fast, explained too much, and gave his energy to people who didn't deserve it. The version of you hearing these words right now knows better. You know that your silence is a weapon. You know that your absence is a statement. You know that your composure is the loudest thing in any room. You are no longer the person who gets baited into arguments with people who were never going to respect you anyway. You are the person who chooses his battles with surgical precision. You are no longer the man who explains himself to people who have already decided to misunderstand him. You are the man who lets his results shut every mouth in the room. You are no longer someone who gives his energy away for free to anyone who demands it. You are the man who invests his power only where it generates a return. But here's the most important thing. This only works if you commit. Tomorrow, life will test you. Someone will say something designed to make you react. Someone will push against your new boundaries. Your old programming will whisper to you, respond, defend yourself, explain, show them they're wrong. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. You can fall back into the pattern that kept you small, reactive, and exhausted. Or you can take a breath, feel the urge pass through you, and choose power over impulse. Choose strategy over emotion. Choose silence over noise. Stand firm. You've come too far to retreat now. The person you're becoming doesn't exist in your comfort zone. He exists on the other side of every reaction you refuse to give, every explanation you refuse to offer, and every provocation you refuse to acknowledge. Drop this final affirmation in the comments, the one that captures everything we've talked about today. I never react, I never explain, I simply outgrow. If this video changed how you think about power and psychology, hit that like button right now. If you know someone who needs to hear this message, someone who's been too reactive, too available, too eager to be understood, share this video with them and subscribe to this channel and ring the notification bell, because we are building something powerful here together, and this is only the beginning. Remember this, the most dangerous person in any room is not the loudest one. It's the one who heard everything, understood everything, and chose to say nothing. That's not weakness, that's mastery. And from this moment forward, that person is you.